Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Friday, December 11th, 2020. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's college basketball games and look ahead to tonight's and the weekend's games. College football, we'll look back on yesterday's games and do the same. NFL, we will look back on last night's game and look ahead and pick Sunday's games. NBA preseason begins tonight. We'll look at the matchups, the latest of the NHL, Major League Baseball news, NBA news that I want to get to as well, and my Fab 5 and best bet of the day. All right, we'll start with college basketball. It's going to be a long show today because it's Friday and there's a lot going on, so we will get started with college basketball. It was a short slate last night, and it's going to be a short slate tonight as well. Campbell over Florida National 122-92. Ohio over Purdue Northwestern 92-72. Western Illinois over Mount St. Joseph 80-55. Buffalo over Mercyhurst 81-64. Jacksonville over New Orleans 77-70. East Carolina over North Florida 73-67. Morgan State over Transylvania 81-55. North Dakota over South Dakota 75-71. Coppin State over UNC Greensboro 85-80. Troy over North Alabama 62-57. Cal Baptist over St. Catherine 93-47. Sam Houston State over Latorno 107-65. Ole Miss over Jackson State 80-45. Portland over Oregon State 87-86 in overtime. Minnesota over UMKC 90-61. UC Riverside over North Arizona 74-50. Western Kentucky over Gardner-Webb 86-84. Texas Rio Grande over Texas A&M Corpus Christi 68-64. San Francisco over Long Beach State 107-62. South Dakota State over North Dakota State 77-75. And number 24 San Diego State over number 23 Arizona State 80-68. All right, today's slate is small, as I mentioned. 1:30 Northeastern against UMass. I got to pull up my projections here. Hang on. I actually did totals for a couple of these games here. I project Northeastern by 5.5 with a total of 138.5. Meanwhile, it's Massachusetts 6.5 total 140.5. I'm going to take Northeastern plus the 6.5 and plus 260 straight up. I don't think UMass is very good. Northeastern, I think, is a sneaky good CAA team this year. So give me Northeastern plus the 6.5 and plus 260 straight up. North Texas and West Virginia, I project the Mountaineers by 17.5 and a total of 147. Well, West Virginia is going to be 14.5 and a total of 136.5. I'm going to lay it with the Mountaineers. 3-point differential. I don't like taking totals in college basketball that much, but if that case comes about, then I will. So give me West Virginia minus the 14.5 against North Texas. They're just better than North Texas. St. John's and Seton Hall. Seton Hall's an 8-point favorite, and the total is 153.5 in terms of projections. We know there's no line out yet on ESPN. And I don't have one on FanDuel because it's Seton Hall's in New Jersey. 5 o'clock on ESPNU. Appalachian State and Charlotte, I project this as a pick'em with a total of 137.5. Well, Charlotte's giving 3.5, total of 132.5. Give me App State plus the 3.5. I don't know if they'll win the game straight up, but I think that it will be competitive and close. High Point against UNC Asheville. I project Asheville as an 18-point favorite. They're giving 4.5, so give me Asheville minus the 4.5. College of Idaho, Eastern Washington, we can skip. Mount St. Joseph, Miami of Ohio, we can skip. 6 o'clock, Latorno's Texas Southern, we can skip. Ryder Manhattan, so some Metro Atlantic action. Manhattan's a 5-point favorite. That line's obviously not brought to you or on FanDuel due to Ryder being in New Jersey, but ESPN doesn't have a line either. I'm going to say that Manhattan probably wins. But I really don't feel too good about it. I'm sorry, Rider wins. I had the minus there. It should be a plus. So, yeah, I think Rider will win. My bad. Good thing I caught myself there. Summit League play, South Dakota State and North Dakota. I project South Dakota State by 17. They're giving 10.5. I'm going to lay the 10.5 with San Diego or South Dakota State. Omaha against Kansas on ESPN2 at 7 o'clock. I project Kansas by 25.5, and Kansas is laying 24.5. 146.5 is the total. I'm going to take the over. I think Kansas is a team that has a good offense and is going to flat out score. I'm not saying they'll cover it by the total by themselves, but I think an offensive outburst by them will certainly help the cause. I could see this game being like 90-61 or something like that, and that's an over, obviously. Next up is Nebraska-Creighton. That is a great game. Nebraska at number 8, Creighton. By the way, Kansas is 5. Big Ten Network. I project Creighton by a whopping 24.5 because I just think Nebraska's no good. And this line is Creighton by 14.5. So I'm going to lay the 14.5 for Creighton against Nebraska. Villanova, Georgetown on Fox Sports 1. I project Villanova by 24. Meanwhile, they're giving 11.5. So give me Villanova minus 11.5 against Georgetown. George Washington against Delaware. I project Delaware by 12. Meanwhile, Delaware is giving 1.5. So I'm going to lay the 1.5 with Delaware against George Washington. I think that's a layup. ESPNU at 7 o'clock. Iona Fairfield. So Metro Atlantic action. I project Iona as a 4.5 point favorite. They're giving 3.5, so 1 point off with this projection. Total's 135.5. I'm going to take the under. Slim juice on the under at minus 112. Georgia Southern, Davidson. I project Davidson by 19. Davidson's giving 14.5, so I'm laying the 14.5 with Davidson. Marist and Canisius. I project Canisius by a whopping 17. And Canisius is... I don't have this line in front of me on FanDuel, but ESPN has it at Canisius by 4. So I'm going to lay the 4 with Canisius against Marist. Hardin-Simmons, UT Arlington, we could skip. South Carolina State and Charleston is next. I thought it said postponed, and I had to do a double take, but it's not. 7 o'clock, SC State and Charleston. I project Charleston by 18.5. Meanwhile, Charleston's giving 19.5. So 1 point off in the other direction. Total's 139.5. I'm going to take the over. Slim juice there at minus 112, though. 7:30, Murray State against Southern Illinois. I project Murray State by 14.5. Meanwhile, Murray State is giving 6.5. So I'm laying the 6.5 with Murray State. CU Harrodsburg and McNeese was canceled. 8 o'clock, you have Niagara against St. Peter's, so a Metro Atlantic play. Neither ESPN or FanDuel has a line, but St. Peter's is in New Jersey, so I can't see a line on FanDuel. St. Peter's is laying 6 as my projected line. I think St. Peter's will win, and I think the game will be competitive. Champions Christian against Houston Baptist, we could skip. Milwaukee, Kansas State at 8 o'clock. I project the Wildcats by 34. Meanwhile, they're only giving 10.5. I'm going to lay the 10.5 with Kansas State to bank on them finally not losing a bye game. NC Central Vanderbilt was canceled. 8:30 Regis University against Northern Colorado. We could skip that. Central Baptist College against Arkansas State. We could skip that. 9 o'clock, Big Ten Network, Cyhawk, Iowa State against number 3, Iowa. I project Iowa by 13.5. You know, they're giving 14.5. Total's 158.5. I'm going to make a bold call on the over here. There's value at minus 106. I think that this could be a 88-82 type of ball game. So give me over 158.5 between Iowa State and Iowa. Cal State Fullerton against San Diego. This is a late addition game to the slate. I project San Diego as a 10.5 point favorite. Meanwhile, I don't see a line yet. I'm going to say that San Diego probably wins the game. Nevada Grand Canyon. I project Grand Canyon as a 2-point favorite. You know, Nevada's favored by 1.5. This is rare today for college basketball, but I'm taking an underdog. I'm taking Grand Canyon plus 1.5 at minus 104 to plus 114 to win the game straight up. So give me Grand Canyon plus 1.5 at a valuable minus 104. This is going to go up to 2. And in the money lines, plus 114. I'll take that as well. North Dakota State, South Dakota. So some Summit League play there. I project North Dakota State by 5.5. They're giving 3.5. I'm going to lay the 3.5 with North Dakota State, although juice is very heavy at minus 118. Marquette, UCLA, 9:30 Pac-12 Network. I project UCLA by 6, and they're favored by 4.5. I'm going to lay the 4.5 with UCLA. Again, some value here at minus 106. 10 o'clock, San Jose State and St. Mary's. I project St. Mary's by 21.5. They're laying 18.5. I have a 3-point edge on St. Mary's, so I'm going to lay the 18.5 with St. Mary's against San Jose State, and I have value at minus 105. All right, Saturday's slate. 11 o'clock a.m. ESPNU, Florida at number 20, Florida State. I'm going to say that, that's tough. I'm going to say State wins because they're home. And I'm going to pick the bigger games. 10 o'clock, ESPN 3, Tennessee State, IUPUI, Green Bay, Northern Iowa, Florida Gulf Coast, Miami, Mississippi State, Dayton on ESPN News. Tough one. I'm going to say Dayton wins that one. 12 o'clock, CBS, Notre Dame, Kentucky. Kentucky's going to blow off the doors. Kentucky's due for an ass-kicking game after starting the season at 1-3. UMK State, Toledo, Cincinnati, number 12, Tennessee. I'm going to say Tennessee. Syracuse, Boston College, ESPNU, 1 o'clock. So ACC play beginning on Saturday. I'm going to take the Orange on the road. Bryant, Stony Brook, 2 o'clock. ACC Network, NC Central, number 16, North Carolina. 2 o'clock, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, number 17, Texas Tech. Rubber Morris, Binghamton, North Georgia, Chattanooga, St. Francis, Pennsylvania, St. Bonaventure. Valpo, Central Michigan. Detroit, Mercy, Western Michigan. Thomas College, Kennesaw State. Flagler, Furman. Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Tulane. Grambling, Incarnate Word. McMurray, Abilene Christian, Gardner-Webb, Pitt, LaSalle, Drexel, Rhode Island College, Sacred Heart, TCU, Texas A&M. I'm going to take, this is tough. I'm going to go with the Horned Frogs on the road. I don't feel great about it. 2:30 Wofford, South Florida. 3 o'clock NBCSN, Evansville, St. Louis. I got to take St. Louis there. South Alabama, Southern Miss. NBCSN, 3 o'clock, Temple, St. Joe's. So it's going to be a one of those regional games. Temple, St. Joe's. This is tough. I'm probably going to take Temple. I don't feel great about it. High Point, UNC Asheville, Dixie State, Denver, Oklahoma State, Wichita State. That's a pretty good game. I'm taking the Cowboys on the road. 4 o'clock, Transylvania, Eastern Kentucky, Idaho, Cal State, Bakersfield, West Carolina, NCAT, Utah Valley hosts Wyoming, Winthrop, South Carolina, Upstate, UAB, East Tennessee State. Greensboro against Coastal Carolina kicks off 5 o'clock. Memphis, Auburn. Good little rivalry there. These teams have some history. I'm going to take Memphis on the road, but I don't feel great about it. Champion Christian, Northwestern State. UC Santa Barbara, Loyola Marymount. Our Lady, Texas State. Sacramento State, Santa Clara. Old Dominion, VCU, and NBCSN. I'm going to take VCU. Confident, Middle Tennessee. Western Illinois against Eastern Illinois. UNC Wilmington, Ole Miss. Florida A&M, Oklahoma. FIU, North Florida. 5:30, Stephen F. Austin, Yale Monroe. 6 o'clock, Fresno Pacific, Cal Baptist. UTEP, Arizona. Ryder, Manhattan. Utah, BYU. UC Davis Pacific, North Dakota State, North Dakota at 6:30. Xavier, Providence. 7 o'clock, Iona, Quinnipiac. Illinois State, Ball State. Marist, Canisius. Louisiana Tech, Louisiana. Sanford, Georgia. 7:30, Carver, McNeese. Alabama, Clemson. So the college football championship game, potentially in college basketball form. I'm going to take, I'm going to take Clemson. Clemson's been pretty good this year, and Alabama shit the bed against Stanford and hasn't been all that impressive. Indiana State, Purdue. 8 o'clock, number 6, Illinois at Missouri. This is a good one. I'm going to take Illinois on the road. I don't feel great about it, and this could be a letdown spot for Illinois because obviously Missouri's good and Illinois is coming off the Duke win. Niagara, St. Peter's, Belmont, Lipscomb, Oregon, Washington, Pac-12 play. I'm going to take Oregon on the road. Central Arkansas against Arkansas. 9 o'clock, Cal State, Northridge, Pepperdine, and South Dakota State against South Dakota Sunday. 12 o'clock, Oakland at number 4, Michigan State. Wright State, Bowling Green, UMass, Northeastern, North Alabama, Indiana. CBS Sports Network, Rhode Island, Western Kentucky. That's a sneaky good game. I'm going to take Western Kentucky. 1 o'clock, a sneaky good game on ESPN. Number 19, Richmond against number 11, West Virginia. I'm going to take the Mountaineers at home to get themselves a win over a ranked opponent on their home court. Hampton, VMI, Bellarmine, Morgan State. 2 o'clock, Northern Illinois against number 3, Iowa. Now we're in the 2 o'clock window. Tarleton, number 5, Kansas. Norfolk State, UNC Greensboro. Loyola Chicago, UIC. Air Force, Drake. Milwaukee, Western Michigan. Penn State, Michigan on the Big Ten Network. That is a really good game. I'm going to take Michigan. Northern Kentucky, Kent State. Mississippi State, Vanderbilt. Jacksonville, SC State. Ohio, Marshall. Winthrop, South Carolina, Upstate. New Hampshire, NJIT. 3 o'clock, ESPN, a good Big 12 game. Number 13, Texas. Number 2, Baylor. I have to take Baylor until further notice. They're just great. East Carolina, Old Dominion. San Francisco, California. UMBC, Coppin State. Cleveland State, number 22, Ohio State. Number 23, Arizona State, Grand Canyon. Now we're in the 4 o'clock window with those 2 games I just mentioned. Yellowstone, Montana State. San Jose State, Cal Poly. ESPNU, SIU, Edwardsville, Northwestern. I'm going to take Northwestern. 5 o'clock, Pac-12. Portland State, Washington State. I'm going to take Washington State. Jacksonville State, Tennessee Tech. 6 o'clock, Mercer, Georgia Southern. 7:30, Fox Sports 1, St. John's, Georgetown. I'm going to take St. John's on the road. I don't feel good about it. 9 o'clock, Northwest Washington against Seattle. And then 9:30, you have Stanford against USC. All right, so there you have it for college basketball for the weekend and for tonight. Now we'll do college football. We will recap the 2 games from yesterday. Then we will do what we normally do. Preview and pick the games for the weekend. Alrighty then. Last night, Southern missed over FAU 45-31. If I'm not mistaken, I called not the upset, but the cover for Southern Miss. Southern Miss is 3-7, FAU 5-3. Pitt over Georgia Tech 34-20. I guess this was either a push or under by a half point because I had the over. Pitt 6-5, Georgia Tech 3-7. All right. We got 3 games on tonight. First one, North Texas against UTEP. I project North Texas by 11.5 and the total of 63.5. Meanwhile, North Texas is giving 9.5 and the total of 64.5. I'm taking North Texas minus 9.5 here. Juice is on it though at minus 114. But I just think North Texas is better than UTEP. 7 o'clock tonight, a good game in the Pac-12. Arizona State against Arizona. I project Arizona State by 6.5, total 50.5. Meanwhile, it's State by 11.5, total 56.5. I'm taking Arizona plus the points. Arizona State's barely played this year. This is a rivalry game. So give me Arizona plus 11.5 and minus 112. Nevada at San Jose State. I project Nevada by 3, total 50.5. Meanwhile, San Jose State's giving 1.5, total 58.5. Give me the under 58.5 here. I think that this is a lower scoring game than people think. San Jose State's defense is pretty good. All right, 12 o'clock tomorrow afternoon on ESPN. Number 1 Alabama against Arkansas. I project Bama by 21.5, total 62. Meanwhile, it's Bama 32.5, total 68.5. I'm taking Arkansas plus the 32.5. I don't think Arkansas is that bad of a team. I just think overvaluing Alabama on the road is what's the case here. Just a little bit. I'm going to say Bama wins by like 28 or something like that as they're peeking at the Florida next week a little bit. So give me Arkansas plus the 32.5 against the Crimson Tide. Sneaky good game in the SEC. Number 9 Georgia against number 25 Missouri on the SEC Network. I project Georgia by 10, total 52. Meanwhile, Georgia is giving 13.5, total 54.5. I'm taking Missouri plus the points here to keep it close. Missouri's been sneaky good of late, and they've exceeded expectations this year. I'm going to say that Georgia wins by 11. Next up, you have Illinois against Northwestern. I project Northwestern by 5.5, total 46.5. Meanwhile, it's Northwestern 13.5, total 40.5. I'm going to take the over 40.5 here. And against a value at minus 108. I just think that Northwestern's offense has improved and Illinois' defense stinks. Next up, you got Utah against Colorado, 12 o'clock on Fox. This is the 12 o'clock on Fox game now with Ohio State, Michigan being canceled due to COVID issues at Michigan. This game was supposed to be played Friday night, but now it's being played tomorrow afternoon. I don't see a line here on FanDuel. I project, though, Colorado 2, total 50.5. Meanwhile, the total is 47.5. ESPN's line is 2.5 for Colorado. I'm going to take over 47.5 here. I have no choice because my number is so close. So give me Utah, Colorado over 47.5. I project it, as I mentioned, 50.5. So I have a 3-point edge on the over. Rutgers, Maryland, 12 o'clock, Big Ten Network. I project Maryland by 4.5, total 57.5. Meanwhile, Maryland's giving 7 and the total is 58. I am going to take Rutgers plus the points. Rutgers has been very surprisingly decent this year, but the results have not showed for it. Greg Schiano's done a great job, so give me Rutgers plus the 7 to keep this close. And I do think that the Terps will wind up getting the victory. Next up, Minnesota, Nebraska. I project Minnesota as a 3-point favorite in a total of 59.5. Meanwhile, Nebraska's giving 10.5 with a total of 59.5. I'm taking Minnesota plus the 10.5 and plus 310 to win the game straight up. I think Nebraska is one of the more overrated and overvalued teams in the country. Not just this year, but definitely this weekend. Northern Illinois against Eastern Michigan. I project Eastern Michigan as a 2-point favorite, total of 65. Meanwhile, Eastern Michigan is giving 6.5, total 54.5. I am going to take the over 54.5. I think this is a higher scoring game than people think. These two teams are allergic to defense, so give me the over in that game. Alrighty. Next up, you got Western Michigan, Ball State. I project Western Michigan by 1.5, total 69. Meanwhile, Ball State is giving 2.5, total of 67.5. I am going to take Western Michigan plus the points and plus 110 straight up for this game. Next up, Wake Forest against Louisville. I project Louisville 5.5, total is 60. Meanwhile, Louisville's only giving 1.5, total 62.5. I'm laying it with Louisville against Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest is one of the more overrated teams in the country. So give me Louisville minus the 1.5. All right, next up, you got UAB and Rice. We are now in the 1 o'clock window. I project UAB by 12, total 45. Meanwhile, UAB is laying 7.5, total of 43.5. All right, I'm laying it with another favor. I'm taking UAB minus the 7.5. I think that UAB is undervalued here. And the juice is on Rice. So I'm getting a lot of value, minus 7.5 and minus 102 as well. So that is pretty good, if you ask me. All right, next up, 2:30, CBS Sports Network, Akron against Buffalo. I project Buffalo by 11, total 62.5. Meanwhile, Buffalo's giving a whopping 32.5, total 59.5. I'm taking Akron plus the 32.5, and I'm going to hold my nose about it. All right, now we're in the 3 o'clock window. First up, you got Coastal Carolina against Troy. I actually project Troy by a half, total 48. Meanwhile, Coastal is giving 13.5, total 51.5. I'm taking Troy plus the points. I don't know if they're going to win straight up, but I think this is a possible letdown spot for Coastal Carolina after the big win over BYU. Next up, you got Central Michigan and Toledo. I project Toledo by 1.5, total of 62. Meanwhile, Toledo's giving 11.5, total 53.5. I love Central Michigan in the points. Central Michigan has been better than people thought this year. They have a good coach in Jim McElwain. I think Jim McElwain will find a way to keep this thing close. So give me Central Michigan plus the 11.5 against Toledo. Next up, you got Navy Army for the first time in a long time. The game being held in West Point. I project Army by 7.5, total 46.5. Meanwhile, Amy, I almost merged those two. Army is giving 6.5, total 37.5. So I have a little bit of an edge on Army, but I like the over a lot. So give me the over 37.5, and it's juiced up the minus 112. So slim juice on the over. So I'm going to take over 37.5 with Navy and Army on Saturday afternoon. It's going to be different this year, obviously, but it's still Army-Navy. Well, Navy at Army. UNC against Miami. I project Miami by 1.5, total 63.5. Meanwhile, Miami's giving 2.5, total 67.5. Now we're in the 3:30 window. I am taking under 67.5. I think this is lower scoring than people think, although both of these teams are good offensively and mediocre defensively. Next up is Wisconsin, Iowa. That game is going to be on FS1. And by the way, North Carolina, Miami's ABC. So Wisconsin's giving 2.5, total 41.5. Meanwhile, I project Iowa by 2 and a total of 42.5. I'm taking Iowa, getting the 2.5 and plus 110 straight up. I just think that this is a good spot for the Hawkeyes. And I think that Wisconsin, because of their COVID outbreak and the fact that they're not in the Big Ten title game, is going to have like a little bit of an after effect here. Next up, Houston, Memphis. I project Memphis by a whopping 9.5 and a total of 61.5. Meanwhile, Houston is favored by 4.5 and a total of 62.5. I'm taking Memphis plus the 4.5 and plus 168 straight up. Michigan State, Penn State. I project Penn State by 2, total of 52.5. Meanwhile, Penn State. I don't see this line anywhere up on FanDuel. Did this game get postponed due to COVID and I don't know about it because I can't find it? This is very, very odd. I can't find this game. Hang on here, guys. Oh, I found it. They moved it to 12 o'clock ABC game, so that makes sense. With the cancellation of Oklahoma, West Virginia, they moved that to 12 o'clock on ABC. So Penn State's giving 4.5, total of 46.5. I'm taking Michigan State plus the 14.5 because Penn State has not been Penn State this year. All right, now we are in the 4 o'clock window. Duke, Florida State. I project Seminoles by 13, total 57. We all Seminoles are giving 4.5, total 56.5. I'm taking Florida State minus 4.5. I think Duke's one of the more overrated teams in college football and college basketball potentially this year too. But that's another story for another day. So give me Florida State minus the 4.5 against the Blue Devils of Duke. All right, next up, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. I project Tennessee by 7, total 50.5. Meanwhile, Tennessee's favored by 16.5, total 49.5. I'm taking Vandy plus the 16.5. I think that Tennessee's been one of the more overrated teams in college football this year. Next up, Boise State against Wyoming. Now we're in the 6 o'clock window. I project Boise by 7.5, total 57. Meanwhile, Boise's giving 11.5, total 46.5. I love the over in this game at minus 114. I think that this has shootout potential. Wyoming's defense is pretty good. That's why the total's so low. But Boise State's offense is really good. And I think Wyoming's offense is a little bit better than people think. So give me over 46.5 between Boise State and Wyoming. Appalachian State, Georgia Southern. I project App State by 3, total of 45. Meanwhile, App State's giving 8.5, total of 45.5. Give me Georgia Southern plus the points. It went down a half point from yesterday. It was at 9.5. Now it's down to 8.5. So give me Georgia Southern plus the 8.5. Now we're in the 7 o'clock window. LSU, Florida. I project Florida by 10, total 62. Meanwhile, Florida is giving 23.5, total 67.5. I'm taking LSU plus all the points because I think that Florida's looking ahead to the SEC title game against Alabama, and plus I have an edge on LSU. Yes, Florida will win, but LSU will cover. Oklahoma State, Baylor, as of now, is still on. There's COVID issues with Baylor, but as of right now, the game is still on. I project Oklahoma State as a 4.5-point favorite. Or I'm sorry, that's the actual line. Getting ahead of myself. I project Oklahoma State by 8, total 49. Meanwhile, Oklahoma State's giving 4.5, total 49.5. I'm laying it with Oklahoma State. I just think they're better than Baylor, and I think that they could win this game by double digits. Louisiana Tech, TCU. I project TCU by only 2.5, total 53.5. Meanwhile, TCU is giving 21.5, total 51.5. I'm taking La Tech plus the 21.5. And I absolutely love it. It was at 23.5, I believe, the other day. Now it's down to 21.5. I still like it. Give me Louisiana Tech plus the points. No, they won't win the game straight up. I just think that this is maybe a 13-point TCU win or a 10-point TCU win, or by single digits even. Right now we're in the 7:30 window, the primetime game on ABC, USC against UCLA. I project the Trojans by 4.5, total 55.5. Meanwhile, Trojans are giving 2.5, total of 62.5. I do not like this pick, but I'm taking under 62.5. I just don't like taking Pac-12 unders. It killed me recently with, I believe it was Oregon Cal. I don't think it was one of my best bets or Fab Fives, but I certainly liked that under, but I like this under. I could see this game being played in the 50s. So give me under 62.5. And if I obviously have to take a side, I take the Trojans laying the 2.5. Now we're in the, never mind. I skipped the game. Auburn, Mississippi State. I project Auburn by 9.5, total 47. Meanwhile, Auburn's giving 6.5, total 49.5. I'm going to lay the 6.5 with Auburn against Mississippi State. Or this could be the game where Mississippi State teases everybody, like how Mike Leach used to tease everybody at Washington State. But Mississippi State had that game earlier in the year against LSU. Maybe they have another one. You never know. But I'm going to lay the 6.5 with Auburn. Now we're in the 8 o'clock window. You got Virginia against Virginia Tech. I project the Hokies by 6, total of 62.5. Meanwhile, the Hokies are only 2.5, total of 62.5. I'm going to lay the 2.5 with Virginia Tech. Short number in a rivalry game. Juices on Vautech at minus 118, though. 9:30, Utah State, Colorado State. I project Utah State by a half, total of 52.5. Meanwhile, Colorado State's laying 12.5, total of 51.5. I'm taking Utah State plus the 12.5. All right, now we're in the 10 o'clock window. San Diego State against BYU. I project the Cougars by 3.5, total of 47.5. Meanwhile, BYU's laying 17.5, total of 47.5. I'm taking San Diego State plus a 17.5 to keep this game close. San Diego State is perceived to be one of the better Mountain West teams, but they really haven't been that great this year. But I do think that they'll be competitive with BYU tomorrow night. So give me San Diego State plus a 17.5. 10:30, you have Fresno State against New Mexico. I project Fresno by 8, total 55. Meanwhile, Fresno's giving 12.5, total 59.5. I'm going to take the under here. New Mexico's offense isn't really that great, neither is Fresno's. Their defenses are no good. I think this game plays into the mid-50s. Stanford, Oregon State. I project Oregon State as a 4-point underdog, total 57. Meanwhile, Stanford's laying 2.5, total 52.5. I'm going to take the over 52.5. I like this pick a lot. I don't want to bet on Stanford. It's only a half-point edge I have with the Cardinal, but I like the over 52.5. I think that both of these teams can score. Stanford's offense has been a little better than I thought, and I think they can get to the high 20s, and I think that Oregon State could score too. So I think potentially Stanford can get to the 30s because Oregon State's defense is no good. So give me over 52.5 between Stanford and Oregon State. Last but not least, at 11 o'clock, UNLV against Hawaii. I project Hawaii by 3.5, total 54.5. Meanwhile, Hawaii's laying a whopping 20.5, a total 56.5. I'm taking UNLV plus the 20.5. That is so easy. I just think that UNLV hangs around. They've been bad, don't get me wrong, but I do think that they will hang around this week. Alrighty then. Now we move on to the NFL for picks for Sunday. Interesting slate to say the least. Obviously, I was correct on the under last night between the Rams and the Patriots. So now for the NFL picks. First up, Cardinals-Giants. Cardinals are 3-point favorites, total 45.5. Meanwhile, I project Cardinals by 3, total of 46.5. My only play here has to be the over. And the juice is on the under at minus 115. The case for the over, I know a lot of people like the under because of the Giants' defense, but Daniel Jones might be back for the Giants this week. If he's not back, then the bet's the Cardinals because Daniel Jones is worth 4 points. So that means my projection would go to 7. But there's been rumors that DeAndre Hopkins might not play, and he's worth 1.5. So the line would move from Cardinals by 3 to Cardinals by 1.5 for me if DeAndre Hopkins doesn't play. But I have a gut feeling, I mean, this is my hardest call of the weekend in terms of a straight up. I'm going to say the Giants win straight up, but I'm not going to bet it because my numbers say are pretty much correct here. Cardinals 3, total 46.5. So I'm off on the total by 1 point. But if you ask me to take a side or a total, it's over 45.5 with some value there at minus 105. Cowboys Bengals, I project the Cowboys by a half, total of 50. Meanwhile, the Cowboys are favored by 3.5, total 42.5. I have no choice but to take the Bengals plus a 3.5. I don't know if they'll win straight up, but I like getting the 3 in the hook. Andy Dalton's returned to Cincinnati, so that's a fun little subplot that people aren't talking about. Maybe it's a revenge spot for Andy Dalton, so that's the case for laying it with Dallas. The over is not bad either, 42.5. I absolutely like the over here because I could see the Cowboy offense getting it a little bit. But you know what? I'm going to make a change here. I'm going to take over 42.5. I hate it, but I know I was on the over for the Bengal game last week against Miami. That didn't work out because Cincy's defense actually played well. Miami's offense has quietly not been that good lately. I do like Bengals plus 3.5, but I'm making the podcast play over 42.5. I talked myself into the over. I could see the Cowboys winning this game 23-20, quite frankly. That just feels absolutely right. Next up, Broncos-Panthers. Without Christian McCaffrey, I project the Broncos by 1. With Christian McCaffrey, I project the Panthers by 1.5. Total 46.5. Meanwhile, the Panthers laying 3.5, total 46.5. I'm taking the Broncos plus 3, McCaffrey or not. I think Denver wins straight up at plus 144 if McCaffrey doesn't play. If McCaffrey does play, then I think the Panthers will win. So give me Broncos plus 3 regardless. Texans-Bears. I project the Bears by 3, total 47. Meanwhile, the Bears are 1.5 point underdogs, total 45.5. I'm taking the Bears plus the 1.5, and I think they'll win the game straight up at plus 102. I believe in do here. I'm taking the Bears because everybody and their brother loves the Texans. Although this is reminiscent of Thanksgiving when they were favored on the road against the bad Lions, and the Lions are better than the Bears right now. So we'll see if that comes into fruition yet again. Chiefs-Dolphins, the Chiefs I project as a 5-point favorite, total of 46. Meanwhile, they are giving 7, total 50.5. I'm taking the under 50.5. I think that the Dolphins' defense has been very, very good. The Chiefs' defense has played well of late. And the Dolphins' offense has not been very good. So I like under 50.5. I don't love the play. I can see this game being 26-23, 26-20 sounds about right for the Chiefs. Vikings-Buccaneers. I project the Bucks by 3, total 52.5. Meanwhile, the Bucks are giving 6.5, total 52.5. I'm taking the Vikings plus the 6.5. And there's value at it with it being at minus 106. Titans-Jaguars. I project the Titans by a whopping 15.5, total 52.5. Meanwhile, the Titans are giving 7.5, total 52.5. I love Tennessee minus the points. I think that this is a bounce-back spot for them in a big way. The Jaguars are obviously tanking. So give me the Titans minus the 7.5 here. 4 o'clock window, Colts-Raiders. I project the Colts by 2, total 51.5. Meanwhile, the Colts are giving 3, total of 50.5. I'm taking the Raiders plus the 3, just playing it safe. It's probably going to go down. The total, meanwhile, I am off by a point. But I'm off by a point with the total too. But I like the Raiders plus the points. I don't feel super about it, but I could see a scenario where the Raiders upset the Colts and win the game straight up. They're plus 126 straight up. Jets-Seahawks. I project the Seahawks by a whopping 16.5 or 16, total of 50. Meanwhile, Seattle's giving 13.5, total is 47.5. I love the Seahawks minus 13.5 and minus 115. Bounce back spot for them after that terrible loss against Colt McCoy and the Giants. 425, Falcons, Chargers. I project Chargers by 1, total of 51. Meanwhile, the Falcons are favored by 2, total of 49.5. I'm taking the Chargers plus the 2. I hate the pick, but I have no choice. Packers, Lions. I project the Packers by 8, total 54.5. Meanwhile, the Packers are giving 7.5, total 55.5. I hate this pick, but I'm taking under 55.5. Neither of these teams' defenses are very good. The Lions might be missing Kenny Galladay, so under 55.5 I think could be a good call. DeAndre Swift might be out as well for Detroit. All right, next up, you got the Saints against the Eagles. Saints are favored, I project the Saints as depending on the status of Drew Brees, which I'm going to look up right now. Rumors that he is unlikely to play Sunday. So let's just assume it's Taysom Hill. With Taysom Hill, I project this 10.5. With Drew Brees, I project this 15. Total 46.5. Meanwhile, the Saints are laying 7, total 43. I love the Saints minus the 7. I just think that the Eagles, too much turmoil. Wench bench for Jalen Hurts. And I think that the fans, even though the Eagles don't have fans right now in the stands, I won't be shocked if there's fans outside the stadium protesting, because that's just so Philadelphia sports fans. So give me the Saints minus the 7. I absolutely love it. All right, next up, you got the Washington professional football team at the 49ers. I project Washington as a 6.5 point favorite, total of 45.5. Meanwhile, San Francisco is favored by 3.5 on a total of 43.5. I love Washington plus the 3.5, minus 118, so heavy juice, and I think they'll win straight up, plus 158 on the money line. Last but not least, Sunday Night Football, you have the Steelers at the Bills. I project the Steelers by 4, total of 48.5. Meanwhile, the Bills are giving 1.5, total 48. I think that's an overreaction line. I love the Steelers getting the 1.5, and I think they're going to win straight up at plus 106. This is an important game for the Bills. They got to win this game, and I think Pittsburgh has to win this game too, because let's face it, if the Browns beat the Ravens on Monday night, and if they lose, all the pressure's on the Steelers these next couple weeks. Although they have an easy game against the Bengals on Monday Night Football coming up. And then they have the Browns again. And then they have somebody else. I can't think of who on top of my head right now. But the Steelers are under some pressure here, because if they lose and the Browns win on Monday night, then the division gets tighter. And the division title is not a guarantee for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So give me the Steelers plus the 1.5. They know what's at stake here. And Buffalo's under pressure too in case Miami upsets KC. But if Miami loses to KC, and the Patriots lost last night, so there's no really that much pressure on Buffalo to win this game. But there is pressure on Buffalo to win this game to prove to everybody, for Josh Allen's sake, the Bills are under pressure. Because if they lose this game, and the Steelers' defense dominates, then you're going to be hearing Josh Allen can't win a big game, because obviously they beat the Niners, but the Niners were missing Nick Bosa and Jimmy Garoppolo. So that's going to be the excuse for the Bills if they turn around and lay an egg on Sunday Night Football. I think this game will be close, obviously, but I just have a feeling here about the Steelers, and they know what's at stake here. And obviously we'll preview and pick Monday Night Football on Monday's podcast. The NBA begins its preseason tonight, so I'm going to look at the games on the preseason slate for tonight. All right, so 7 o'clock tonight, Knicks-Pistons, so Obi Toppin makes his debut for the Knicks and the Pistons, the New York Pistons with all the Pistons draft picks, Killian Hayes. 7 o'clock, Magic-Hawks. So you got the new look Hawks going up against the Magic. 8 o'clock NBA TV, Rockets Bulls. No James Harden, obviously. Christian Wood potentially making his Rockets debut, and in the Bulls, obviously Patrick Williams and Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter. So they have their Mischief of Toys team. Clippers-Lakers at 10 o'clock. Surprised that's not on national TV. No LeBron and AD, and I don't think Kawhi's going to play either. And at 10:30, ESPN Kings Trailblazers. So you have Tyrese Halliburton on national TV tonight. And we don't know if Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum are going to play. If so, that would be more interesting. So there you have it for tonight's preseason slate. Tomorrow, Raptors Hornets, 7 o'clock NBA TV. Pacers Cavaliers, Thunder Spurs, 8 o'clock Mavs Bucks, Grizzlies Timberwolves, 8:30 Nuggets Warriors, 9 o'clock Suns Jazz. Sunday, 7 o'clock Knicks Pistons again. 5 o'clock Magic Hawks, 6 o'clock Wizards Nets, 7 o'clock Knicks Pistons, 8 o'clock Rockets Bulls, 8:30 ESPN Clippers Lakers. So Clippers Lakers is on ESPN on Sunday night at the same time as Steelers Bills. And at 9 o'clock we have the Kings against the Trailblazers. Now I want to get some information out from an NBA news standpoint. James Harden obviously requested a trade, and obviously Nets and 76ers were his preferred destinations. He's added 2 more Eastern Conference contenders to that list, the Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat. If he were to be traded to the Milwaukee Bucks, you would think that Chris Middleton would have to be in the trade. And then imagine a big three of James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Drew Holiday. That would be awesome. And then Brook Lopez, too. And then you throw in Dante DiVincenzo in the deal, and a bunch of future first-round picks. Then the case for the Bucks making that trade is that they're all in on Giannis staying, but then again, they don't have the picks because they traded them all away for Drew Holiday. Miami, they traded a bunch of picks away for Goran Dragic back in the day, and now they have a lot of picks again. You don't have to give up Butler or Bam. You'd would probably have to give up Dragic. Tyler Herro probably has to be in that deal. Kendrick Nunn has to be in that deal. And then a lot of future draft picks. So Miami, I think, has a better argument than Milwaukee because Milwaukee gave up all their picks in the Drew Holiday deal. Meanwhile, Miami has Tyler Herro, Kendrick Nunn, and a bunch of future firsts to give to the Rockets if they were to pull off a James Harden trade. So Miami, James Harden is very, very enticing, and that would be James Harden's team, and then he could distribute to Jimmy Butler, so he'd have a good teammate, and then Bam in the middle, so he has a center and a good two-way wing, and then a good coach in Eric Spoelstra. So that would be tremendous if Miami were able to pull that off. So now I want to talk about some more COVID rules. So yesterday we talked about how a player, if they test positive, has to quarantine for 12 days. So they can't be with the team for 12 days. And now some more NBA COVID information has come out. Obviously, Shams and Woj were reporting it, that the NBA is planning to do some point-of-care rapid testing system during the season. Results expected in approximately 30 minutes for home markets and 90 minutes on the road. That is tremendous, tremendous news for the NBA. And I think that is a big deal because, God forbid, somebody tests positive before a game. They either postpone it or the player has to sit, depending on how many positive cases there are. And then the policy for invalid coronavirus test results undergo another rapid test at least 3 minutes after the result of the first test and still able to participate in team activities while awaiting second result. So that is some interesting news right there from Shams regarding COVID testing for the NBA this season. So it all begins tonight with the preseason. And According to Shams, 8 new NBA players have tested positive for COVID out of 541 tested in the latest round since December 2nd. So that's a drop-off from 48 from last week. So 40 cases is the difference between last week and this week. So last week was 48, that's a lot, and now single digits at 8. So that's a solid number. 8 out of 541 is pretty darn good. Now an NHL update really quickly. The division realignments have been revealed. So I want to talk about that as Pierre LeBrun, among others, were reporting. So the division alignments: Boston, Buffalo, New Jersey, Islanders, Rangers, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Washington. So it's Metro with the addition of Boston and Buffalo, and then Carolina and Columbus move to the other division. And then the other division is Carolina, Columbus, Detroit, Chicago, Florida, Minnesota, Nashville, Tampa Bay. So this is pretty much what I speculated, except I thought that it would be a little bit different. So I didn't think that Boston and Buffalo would be given to the Metro. I thought that was a possibility, but I thought that the Metro, there's a chance that Metro would stay the same, and then Boston and Buffalo would move or merge with their Atlantic U.S. opponents, and then merge with the Blackhawks, the Predators, among others. So Minnesota's in this division, so that's interesting. And in the Central Division, or I should say a Central Pacific merger: Anaheim, Arizona, Colorado, Dallas, LA, San Jose, St. Louis, and Vegas. I'm surprised that St. Louis is in this group. I thought that Minnesota would be in this group and St. Louis would be merged with Tampa and Nashville. I think this is odd for the league because obviously used to Blues Blackhawks as a division rival. And at least the Blues and the Stars are still together. But I think the NHL screwed up a little bit. I think that Minnesota belongs in the other division and St. Louis belongs with the other group. Because St. Louis, Nashville, I think makes sense. But then again, Minnesota in that other division makes sense as well because they're close to Chicago. And then Dallas with the Pacific makes a lot of sense. That's what I thought the move was going to be, because then they could travel to Colorado. And then Colorado with this division makes sense, obviously, too. And then Arizona's eventually moving to this division. This division, once Seattle begins the Kraken, which that would be in the 21-22 season. And then obviously all the Canadian teams are in the same division. So Vancouver, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, and Calgary. So that's a 7-team division. And then, so for this year, Chicago, Minnesota, it's Chicago, Minnesota, and Nashville are in the Eastern Conference. But then again, the Bulls are in the Eastern Conference in the NBA, and the Blackhawks are in the Western Conference in the NHL. So at least some Chicago fans are used to the Eastern Conference because of the Bulls in basketball. So it's a weird move for the Blackhawks, only temporarily. And the Minnesota Wild and the Nashville Predators in the Eastern Conference is a little weird, though. That's going to be tough to get used to. And then the Red Wings moved to the Eastern Conference in the 2013-14 season after being in the West in the previous seasons. So the Blackhawks, the Wild, and the Predators move to the Eastern Conference. Unless if that's going to be the Western Conference, and the Canadian teams are going to be in the West. So take back what I just said about Chicago, Minnesota, and Nashville. They're just going to be playing a lot of Eastern Conference opponents. And then obviously the Maple Leafs, the Canadians, and the Senators will be playing a lot of Western Conference opponents with Calgary and Winnipeg and Vancouver. So, a little bit of a mix-up. And don't forget, Winnipeg was in the Eastern Conference not that long ago either, and now they're in the West. So they pretty much flipped with the Red Wings back in 2013. So I don't know if the Canadiens division is going to be Eastern Conference or Western Conference, and the Central Atlantic merger is West or East. So that's an interesting subplot. Do the Eastern Conference teams stay in the Eastern Conference, or the Western Conference teams stay in the Western Conference? So we'll see. So what we know about the NHL, according to Gino Rita of TSN. Puck drop, January 13th. We talked about that. That's a Wednesday. 4 divisions. And then there's the All-Canadian division, which we talked about. Any other hockey news we get, we'll discuss on the podcast on Monday. Alrighty, now I want to quickly touch on some Major League Baseball news before we get to Fab 5 and Best Bet. The Philadelphia Phillies have hired Dave Dombrowski to be their new president of basketball operations. I think this is a huge deal for the National League East and for the Philadelphia Phillies. This is a really big-time hire. Obviously, it didn't work out for him in the end there at the Red Sox, although he brought a championship to Boston. He's really good with Detroit back in the day, helping them get to some World Series, and then the Marlins as well. So this is his 4th stop. Obviously, he has Bryce Harper there. He has Joe Girardi there. Now I think the Phillies with Dombrowski are poised to make some big deals. When Dombrowski was first brought into Boston, he was making some big deals right away. David Price, Chris Sale. I think Philadelphia is now in play to trade for some stars. Francisco Lindor, Chris Bryant. I think Philadelphia is a potential trade destination for those guys. And you know that he's going to be thinking big and going for it right now. And Alec Boehm, I think, is a young player that I think is going to be on the trade block. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Maybe I'll get Terry Cushman on the podcast before Christmas, and we'll talk about the baseball offseason and all the signings that have happened thus far and the ones that are still yet to come and some predictions and whatnot. And speaking of signings, Carlos Santana signed with the Kansas City Royals on a 2-year, $20 million deal. I think that is an interesting signing, to say the least. He's a veteran that's been in big games before. He obviously was with the Indians the past couple of years and then was briefly with the Phillies. So he knows the division. I think that he can help those young players. I think he's somebody that I think is probably going to get traded at the trade deadline if the Royals are out of it. But yeah, I like that pickup. It's cheap. And he's somebody that's a big home run hitter, but KC's a big ballpark. I don't really like the match necessarily because I think his power numbers will go down. But I think that he's a veteran that can help that team grow into a contender in the future. Now my Fab 5 and my best bets. We'll start Fab 5 in college football. First up, you got Central Michigan plus 11.5 against Toledo. I talked about it earlier. That's too many points for Jim McElwain's team. And I think that they will hang around for a majority of the game. I do not think they'll win the game straight up, but I do think that they'll easily cover that number. Troy plus 13.5 against Coastal Carolina. I think this is a classic letdown spot for Coastal after their big win over BYU as a 10.5 point underdog. Now they're giving 13.5 against Troy. I think this is a letdown spot, and I think Troy could potentially win the game outright. Florida State minus 4.5 against Duke. I think Duke's one of the more overrated teams in college football, and Florida State, I think, is overrated too, but I think they're undervalued here at 4.5. So give me Florida State minus the 4.5 to get themselves a nice victory against Duke. Louisiana Tech plus 21.5 against TCU. I just think that's too many points for TCU to be laying. I think Louisiana Tech is not that bad. And I think that this is a game that's going to be decided in the teens. So give me Louisiana Tech plus 21.5 against TCU. And last but not least, Minnesota plus 10.5 against Nebraska. I think this is the most ridiculous line of the weekend. And I think they'll win straight up at plus 310, and that's my money line pick of the week. So Minnesota plus 10.5 against Nebraska is the last of the Fab 5 picks for college football. And my money line pick of the week is Minnesota plus 310 against Nebraska. And the NFL picks. First up, Vikings plus 6.5 against the Bucks. I hate going against Tom Brady, but I'm doing it here. I think this is too big. Minnesota's playing for a playoff spot in the NFC. The Cardinals are falling apart. They could very well lose to the Giants on Sunday. But there's a ton of pressure on Kyler Murray. And there's a ton of pressure on Kirk Cousins too. But who's under more pressure than both of those guys? Tom Brady, who is coming off a bye and 2 straight losses. I think the Bucks will win, but I like getting 6 in the hook. I think that the Bucks probably win this game by 3 against the Minnesota Vikings. Titans minus 7.5 against the Jaguars. Jaguars are tanking for Trevor and for Justin Fields. And I think that Tennessee is in a bounce-back spot here against Jacksonville. And Tennessee did beat Jacksonville earlier in the year, but Jacksonville covered. And I was on Jacksonville. I didn't bet on Jacksonville, but Jacksonville was one of my podcast picks in week number 2. But I'm on the other side of the rematch here. I'm laying the 7.5 with Tennessee against Jacksonville. And I think Ryan Tannehill is going to be able to move the ball successfully like he did in the second half against the Browns here against Jacksonville. Seahawks minus 13.5 against the Jets. I think this is a bounce-back spot for Russell Wilson and company. Jamal Adams revenge. I think Jamal Adams is definitely going to have a pick 6 in this game. So there's a bonus prediction for you on the podcast. Jamal Adams pick 6. So I'm going to lay the 13.5 with the Seahawks over the New York Jets. Saints minus 7 against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles have been a team I bet on a lot this year, but not this week. I love the Saints. And regardless of who's at quarterback, Drew Brees or Taysom Hill, Jalen Hurts is starting for Philly. I think that the Saints win this game by double digits. The Saints have been very good with Taysom Hill. They've been running the ball with Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray. Hill can run as well. And I think the Saints have some good weapons. Emmanuel Sanders has been really good. Michael Thomas has been good since coming back. So give me the Saints minus 7 against the Eagles. And last but not least, the Washington professional football team plus 3.5 against San Francisco. Washington's playing for a division title. If the Giants win, or if the Giants lose on Sunday, and I think that is the toughest call of the weekend, Giants-Cardinals, because I am correct on the spread and 1 point off on the total. I think that Washington, regardless of the Giants' result, is going to get up for this game. Alex Smith revenge game against San Francisco. So Alex Smith back in San Francisco. So I love Washington plus 3.5, and that's my money line pick of the week at plus 150. So the last of my Fab 5, Washington plus 3.5 against the San Francisco 49ers and plus 150 straight up. And by the way, I project Washington as a favorite in this game too. So there you have it for Fab 5 for the weekend in each college football in the NFL. And now my best bet of the night, brought to you by FanDuel. I'm going to go to college basketball for tonight's pick. There's some good ones that I really, really like for the weekend. And the one I'm going to pick is the Villanova Wildcats minus 11.5 against Georgetown. I love this Villanova team. I don't think Georgetown's very good. If I'm not mistaken, Georgetown lost a bye game earlier in the year, so I'm laying it with Villanova minus 11.5 against Georgetown. So there you have it for the podcast today. I'm going to be back on Monday recapping all the college football, all the NFL, all the college basketball, all the NBA preseason, looking ahead to everything on Monday, including Monday Night Football between the Ravens and the Browns. The latest hockey news I'll have for you on the podcast on Monday as well. And any other news regarding baseball or anything really in sports and pop culture, I'll have it for you on the podcast on Monday. I hope you guys have a fabulous weekend, everyone.